We have a big program. It's going to feel very busy. So please strap in and hang on as we move through everything. So again, hi everybody. Welcome to this celebration of 20 years of the Forest Dialogue Associated Publications launch. I think as most of you know, I'm Gary Dunning. I am and have been the executive director of TFD since the creation of the Secretariat at Yale in 2000. Today, we want to both reflect back and look ahead. As TFD has always been about, people will be hearing from lots of different folks throughout the event. And just a note that we will also hang out from 10 to 11 Eastern time for anybody that would like to share and talk and tell stories. We would love to hear from you. So the formal program is from 8 to 10 this morning, and then another hour for folks that want to hang out. Again, be prepared for a fast-paced whirlwind program. A few ground rules to keep in mind during the event. Please keep your mics muted or until prompted to speak, but feel free to keep your cameras on so we can marvel at how we all look the exact same as we did 15 years ago or 20 years ago. I think seeing everybody's faces, I am marveling. We all look about the same. Speaking of, note that we'll have a slideshow running throughout most of the event with great shots from TFD's vast photo collection. I think you all remember me and others from TFD running around in your face with our cameras in the field. We are now going to see some of those shots. On your Zoom controls, you should be able to maximize and minimize your views between the size of the slideshow and the gallery view of participants. So if you want big slides, you can have a big slideshow and minimize all the faces that you see. But if you want to see, if you prefer to see everybody's faces, you can slide the bar over and make a very small slideshow. Anyway, I'll leave that to you to figure out how you want to view. So one of our key objectives for the event today is to launch 3 brand new publications, which we are very proud of. The first, of course, is the TFD book. You'll see in my background, it's to the left of me. I think my left. Anyway, it's on the side. And that we're doing right now. But later on, we will launch the Forest Dialogue Guide to Dialogue and the Guide to the Land Use Dialogues, 2 different guides about how and the finer points of conducting dialogues in the field. So stay tuned because the guides, those guides will be launched later in the program. So we'll be giving everybody links to those guides in a little while. A quick note about the book, titled If Trees Could Talk, 20 Years of TFD. That book conceptually started out as a coffee table style picture book filled with lovely pictures and a few captions here and there. However, it ended up being an engrossing retelling of TFD's journey through the eyes of individuals that helped lead and drive dialogue on forests forward. And I'll tell you what, I couldn't be happier with the results. I'd like to thank Barney Jeffries for weaving together this wonderful story from countless hours of interviews, and Luca Guadano for his sharp eye and picture selection and keeping the process moving forward. I think the result is terrific, and I hope you join me in enjoying that publication. You should now be able to download the entire book via the link in the chat box. But however, if for some reason you would like us to email you the file, just give us your email in the chat. Also, right now, we want to hear from you. Okay, this is your opportunity for you to share some ideas with us. In the chat box, you will see a link for a word cloud app. We ask that each of you click the link and type your answer to the following question. Dialoguing on forest means. So please tell us in 1 or 2 words what it means to you to dialogue about forests. You should see the word cloud of people's responses start forming before your very eyes. Let me give you a second to locate the link if you have any questions on this or anything about the event in general. Please put your questions in the chat and one of the TFD staff members will reply. Okay. Now hopefully you've seen the link to the word cloud. Right. So it's my pleasure now to introduce the Forest Dialogue's intrepid co-leaders, also known as my bosses, Ivone Nemikawa and Milagre Nibunga. Ivone is the Sustainability Director at Klabin, a forest company in Brazil. Ivone has been a TFD steering committee member since 2014 and co-leader of the Forest Dialogue since 2017. Milagre is the Executive Director of the Mikaya Foundation, an environmental and development NGO based in Mozambique. Milagre joined TFD in 2013 and was named co-leader in 2020. Like co-leaders that have preceded them, Milagre and Ivone have really taken TFD's well-being and development to heart. It is my absolute personal and professional honor to work with them in this mission, and I want to thank them for taking it on. Over to you, Milagre and Ivone.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. And also, as I'm speaking to you from Mozambique, bom dia, boa tarde, e boa noite a todos. It is indeed a pleasure to be here with you today. And thank you, Gary, for those opening words. And I would like, I know we have a tight, very, very tight event because we want to hear from you all. I would like to start by asking my esteemed co-leader, Ivone Nemikawa, to welcome us all in the name of the steering committee. Thank you, Ivone.
Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to be here today. Oh, it's a great honor to be a member of this steering committee and work with so wonderful people around the world. Today, I would like to thank you, all of you, to be here and to welcome all of you in this, what I call, exciting journey in the next 2 hours. We are going to pass through the history of TFD, but also to talk about our development and what we expect for the future. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that it will be an excellent opportunity also to be with you, to meet each one. I know that it is going to be online, digital. I wanted to hug everyone, but it's not impossible now. Then let's take this time to be together. So thank you so much for being here, and let's go to our journey. Thank you, Milagre.
Let me unmute myself. Thank you, Ivone, for that. As I said, this is going to be a tight event. We will want to hear from all of you. And so right now, what I would like to do is to ask Gary to introduce this event, to introduce our MCs.
Thanks, Milagre. Yes, now to introduce the MCs for the event today. Milagre, of course, is one of our MCs, and you've already met Milagre. The other MC will be James Griffiths. Well, for those that don't know James, what can I say? Well, a lot, and maybe that will be for later. But James joined the Forest Dialogue Steering Committee when he began directing the World Business Council for Sustainable Development's Forest Solutions Group in 2003. He and Stuart McGinnis took over as co-leaders in 2007, and James left the steering committee in 2014. But James has stayed very engaged and has promoted the TFD process through various projects ever since. So back to you, James and Milagre. Please take us away.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Milagre, you're up next, right? And then I'm kicking. Or am I go, Gary?
Milagre is going to introduce Tim Gregoire.
Yeah.
I was just finding my my audio to unmute. And well, our program, as you know, we are very fortunate to be hosted by Yale and Yale University, and we couldn't start this without hearing from them, hearing what TFD represents for them, for the university, and also probably that we will be able to hear a little bit about what the relationship between TFD and Yale is going to be, not just what it is today, but also in the future as we grow together in this journey. So for that, we are going to hear from Tim, and who was the faculty liaison for TFD at the school when the secretariat was first established in 2000. He was a forest statistician, but although he was a bit uncomfortable with the role he was going to play at first, he navigated all the challenges that TFD was going to bring with it, as he has an externally directed stakeholder engagement platform within the faculty. Through his strong leadership and commitment, he managed to fight to keep us, to keep TFD and all of us at the steering committee at Yale. And if it wasn't for his effort along the years, I don't know where TFD would have been today. Would like, in the name of the steering committee, in the name of TFD, and all of us who have been involved in the Forest Dialogue, to thank him for his perseverance and commitment, and ask him to share a few words with us. Tim, please.
Thank you, Milagre. For once, I did remember to unmute, so you should be able to hear me now. I hope you'll be able to hear me. Let me open by saying I bring the welcome from our Dean, Indy Burke, to the TFD and to this remembrance, 20-year remembrance. And thinking back over my 20-year involvement, well, Gary got involved with TFD before I did. And this is the days reading Scott Wallinger's history of TFD to refresh my own memory of the early days. I hope you've all seen this. It could stand to be updated now, but for the early history, it's wonderful and brings back a lot of memories. So Gary has been involved here at Yale with TFD from its inception, moving on from YFF, or in addition to YFF, and then I guess beginning in 2000, or thereabouts, when Gus was dean and Scott Wallinger and Nigel Sizer approached Gus to explain about their conception of what this forced dialogue is going to be. And Gus was all for it. And we needed some type of faculty liaison. I'm not quite sure why now, except TFD now is pretty well accepted within the school by virtue, I guess, of the amount of time it's been here. And I think when the steering committee started meeting here in person, that really made a big difference because people could see who the steering committee of TFD was. And so as a consequence, I've met many of you. I haven't seen many of you for years. But in the early days, Milagre hinted there was a bit of confrontation. Maybe that's not quite the word. People didn't know what this TFD was about. Was it something that Dean Smith was just kind of imposing on the school or what? And there were certain of my colleagues looking at the subjects of the dialogues that said, why are you using my work? And that's where I had to intervene in those days and say, that's not what the dialogue is all about, to highlight your work in this particular area or anybody else's on the faculty. We're just a convening platform. So I did have to run a little bit of interference, but that was then, and that's not true anymore. TFD is a well-recognized product of the school. Is that the right word? And I've been proud to be involved in all these years. And again, if you haven't yet had an opportunity to read Scott Wallinger's history of the early days of TFD, it's an enjoyable read. A lot of details in it that I won't go into now. So again, welcome to you all, and I look forward to the events for the next 2 hours or so.
Thanks.
Thank you, team.
Great to see you. So I'm going to start the next two sort of 20-minute sessions off looking at the origins, the roots, I guess, of TFD. And Tim, I appreciate you remembering the role Gus played, but the people that really got the Forest Dialogue going was an individual from the civil society NGO community, Nigel Sizer, and Scott Wallinger. From, I guess back then it was Mead, an international forest products company. So really, Nigel and Scott, if you unmute yourself, and I just want to get the first question off, which is, why did you take this leap of faith? People remember that 1980s, 1990s was a very contentious time, certainly between on forestry, certainly between the forest products industry and global NGOs. So perhaps, Nigel, let's start with you. Why did you take this leap of faith? And then we'll turn to Scott.
Yeah, thank you, James. And I mean, first, let me just say hello to everyone. It's amazing to see all of you after all these years. Greetings from Westchester County in New York. I'm about 40 miles north of New York City now. Not far from where I first met Scott in his wonderful offices on Park Avenue in Lower Manhattan, now deserted thanks to the pandemic. A lot has happened in the last 20 years. I also want to really thank all of you. I want to thank Tim and Yale. Huge thanks to Gary and the team. Gary, you've done an incredible job. I hope we have a chance to talk more about the remarkable role that you have played over the last 20 years in this as well. And it's incredible to meet with Milagre and Yvonne and literally see how TFD has gone from strength to strength, from 2 white Anglo-Saxon males living in the United States to 2 women of color from the global South. I think that that alone says a great deal for how this organization has evolved and strengthened since our very modest beginnings. Trying to think back to what was going on when we started this, just a few quick comments on that. I think Scott will have a lot more to say about that. Personally, I think I was horrified at the time, of course, by what was going on. with deforestation, with abuse of forest people's rights continuing largely unchecked around the world. That still continues, of course, unfortunately. And I was horrified by the waste of effort, the waste of energy going into conflict fights between different interest groups. To some of it are sort of really around the margins of these issues and not really getting into the real issues that were underlying it. There was a massive struggle that was very distracting, in my view, in the world of certification, a struggle between groups who were all broadly trying to improve the way forests were certified, were being managed and thereby certified, but with quite different views about what that should look like. And that really struck me as a tremendous waste. I met with Scott. I was very intrigued by his incredible sincerity, his willingness as an industry leader to engage in dialogue. He was clearly a person of deep integrity, and from the first time I met him, we had an extremely rich, enriching and honest conversation about how we explore things. No one seemed to be trying to bring the different camps together and have a conversation, which seemed an enormous wasted opportunity. So why not try what was there to lose? What was the view? And as soon as we started bringing different people together, I think we were surprised at how productive that was, how enriching it was, how personally enjoyable it was. And while there were certainly deep, deep disagreements, and at that time, it felt like big political differences, though that sounds very quaint in the world of America today, we basically liked each other. And I think that then created the foundation for TFD to build upon. And I think that's a good point to hand back to you, James, and see what Scott has to say about this. Thanks.
Thanks, Nigel. Scott, so how did you convince your bosses to enter in this new way of discussion and interface with stakeholders? Please tell us.
Well, James, as Nigel has set the stage very nicely, we were at a time in which there was really intense disagreement among the major conservation NGOs and the forest industry and many of the forest owners groups that was centered on the three competing forest certification systems. But embedded within that were all of the diverse issues that Nigel has been talking about, associated with planted forests, whether exotic or non-exotic species, the use of herbicides, genetic processes, use of herbicides, you name it, all of that was embedded in those discussions. And there were very strongly held views all around. Under the WBCSD, the study had been completed towards a sustainable paper industry, and Steve Bass was very much involved in that. And one of the things that it highlighted was the need for dialogue among the various parties. In general, the leaders among the various interests were talking at and generally past each other, but they weren't talking to each other. My one-on-one conversations with some of the leaders among the European conservation organizations showed that there was a potential to find solutions if people just got to know one another, build some trust, and begin to have a real conversation. And when we learned what motivated each other and what made us up as individuals, we found far more commonality in our background and interests than any of us had realized in the other forum where we just got together and presented our talking points. So the initial TFD dialogue in London confirmed that there was a basis for us to have good working conversations. And I think the first three meetings of the TFD steering committee really reinforced that. As far as Yale was concerned, initially, Nigel and I were working hand in glove trying to get TFD organized, and Nigel was doing all of the bookkeeping for what accounts we had, and we realized we needed something in the way of a secretariat. And I had been serving on the Yale External Advisory Committee to the Global Institute of Sustainable Forestry, and that seemed to be a logical place because at that time Yale's student body was about 50% foreign, and TFD was going to be a global entity. So it took a little bit of convincing for Klaus Hall of our crews that this place up in Connecticut was the right place. But we went up and met with Gus, and as Tim Gregoire has said, we went from there.
Thanks so much, Scott. So in a few minutes, I'm going to bring in some of the other early players who were involved in taking forward this idea that you and Nigel kicked off. But just one final reflection from you, Scott. Well, I'll start with Nigel. Nigel, what surprised you the most out of the TFD process you were involved with? Surprised you, or something you took forward into your career and changed how you thought about forests?
Yeah, well, if you ask about what I took forward, I mean, a lot of my career since then has been built on bringing people together and creating new partnerships, new alliances, and that absolutely defines all of the work that I now do and will be doing for the coming years. I'm sure of that. So TFD perhaps sort of laid the foundations for that within my mind for how we can make progress on some of the most difficult issues. I'm using lessons learned from TFD now on pandemic prevention, partnerships globally, on new approaches to carbon markets, on trying to solve some of the toughest problems. I don't know if we'll succeed, but I know that the only way we can succeed is by bringing very different people together to address these problems. We saw with TFD that we could have a very constructive conversation among people who very strongly disagreed with each other, who were engaged in aggressive campaigns against each other. We learned that the dialogue really helps. I think we learned that no one really engaged really wants to destroy nature or harm people, even if they are involved in doing that. That's really a very small group of people that want to be doing that. And we learned that when we get together, I think we quite like each other, because deep down we're actually all working on similar issues and fundamentally trying to achieve the same objective, just maybe have very different views about how to get there and what's most important within the range of issues that we're working on.
Thanks, Nigel. Scott, a final learning or reflection from you?
Certainly, James. I was right at the end of my career during that period of time, so I didn't have a lot of time to carry things forward in business, but I think that the discussions within TFD emphasize very strongly that you can't stereotype individuals on the basis of the organizations for which they work, whether it's an NGO or a company. If you have an image, for example, of what Greenpeace, a WWF, or a corporation represents, you tend to infer those characteristics on an individual and make assumptions. And the dialogues show that that really isn't what happens. When you get to know people, you find often that they are quite different from what you had perceived. For example, in our dialogue in Somerville, we asked Alexei Yaroshenko with Greenpeace in Russia why he wasn't bringing up a lot of the issues that were at the heart of Greenpeace of the day. And Alexei said, look, he said, I'm in Russia when 80% of the forest around me is being cut down illegally. I don't have time to waste on those other things. And in a conversation with Roberto Smeraldi, with Friends of the Earth in Brazil, I asked him about the tree plantations programs in southern Brazil. And he said, you know, he said, every tree they're growing down there for a country that needs wood means a tree they're not taking out of the Amazon, and I'm all for it. Those were not things that you would have automatically inferred from individuals on the basis of who they worked for. And to me, that was the sort of thing that if you don't get to know a person, find out what they're really interested in, you can draw all kinds of wrong conclusions about where you think they are on issues.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So moving from the organization to the individual, getting to know somebody and then looking for common ground. So thanks so much, Nigel and Scott, for those insights. So now I want to bring in three other people involved in the foundation in early development. Steve Bass, Tagi Klingberg, and then Laszlo Stadius. So Steve, your name's already been mentioned as having something to do with the founding of the Forest Dialogue. So as somebody who worked on forest policy, global forest policy, what did you think dialoguing could do to change the forest policy landscape?
Hey, thanks, James. Great to see you and so many people, and see these wonderful pictures of what's going on all over the world with TFD. Well, why dialogue? For me, one of the roots of TFD was this thing, the sustainable paper cycle. There are many deep roots of TFD, which is why it's resilient to wind throw, you see, and that's one of them. And this process started with a huge bold question from Erling Lorentzen: what's better, recycled paper or paper from virgin fiber? That's a very bold question with a lot hanging on it at a time where there was a lot of animosity, and such a bold question is always a good basis for dialogue. We ran that process partly through research. That was one side of the coin. There's a huge international diagnostic with consultants from all over. But the other side of the coin was actually a bit more interesting. It was a consultation exercise, more surprising, more revealing. It showed that the diversity of concerns and asks within the NGO community and within the industry was far greater than we envisaged at the outset. So how do we bring these two things together, the research findings, the consultation findings? We realized that our own progress over 2 years, this was WBCSD and IAD and so many others, that in a sense had a dialogue amongst itself. We learned from each other, we changed, we reached a consensus, we became friends. We showed that some kind of consensus was possible. Yes, there were a lot of recommendations, but our top recommendation was two things: an international roundtable and an agenda for dialogue, in order to take forward some of these recommendations. Well, the paper industry didn't go on to make its own sort of international forum, but forestry colleagues went on to form the TFD. So to your question, why did I feel dialoguing would improve the forest policy landscape? Firstly, because we'd shown through that sustainable paper cycle process that it would improve the mutual respect and the learning and make us friends, as Nigel has said. Secondly, that it would bring a systematic approach instead of all these kind of fires in different buckets and magic bullets, a systematic approach to get to the heart of the forest issue. And thirdly, that from this dialogue process, a new kind of leadership would arise. So we had all these good ideas emerging at the time in terms of forest standards and certification, the roles of plantations and what we called social dimensions of responsible care. But each of them was fragile. Each of them really needed a process of listening and learning and building demand. You know, consultation weaknesses, it's just a moment in time. Research weaknesses, it's siloed. Policy weaknesses, it's the lack of voice. There's a lack of process and time to go through this. The dialogue process tackled this research weakness, tackled the consultation and policy weakness, and pointed to the need for systemic change. So for that systemic change, we needed a systemic dialogue process, hence the TFD.
So look, organizations only get going once they're branded. So I'm now going to bring in Tagi Klingberg. So Tagi, I wasn't actually at this meeting that I'm going to briefly ask you to talk about where the brand, the Forest Dialogue, came up. So I'd like to invite you, any observations, particularly what was in it for small forest owners around the world. Tage, are you unmuted? Tage? If he's not there, I'm going to, I know Lars is here. So Lars, you also helped shape the Forest Dialogue. You came up with a very important concept for us, fracture lines. So a few reflections on you. Why was fracture lines? Why did you think that was something that would be useful for the Forest Dialogue?
Yeah, good day, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm actually not driving this car. It just looks like it. So the original suggestion, I think, was actually fault line and not fracture line. It became fracture line through the diplomatic genius of Stuart McGuinness. But why fracture lines? I think because they are an interesting fusion of problem and opportunity. And you have the obvious fracture lines when people line up on different sides of an issue and they stop talking to each other and they start talking about each other and they start to distrust each other, and that is corrosive, and that should be stopped and these fracture lines bridged, of course. But then you have other fracture lines like the fracture line between knowledge and lack of knowledge, which I think is related to this geographical expansion of TFD. The global realm of forest is so big that nobody knows even more than a small part of it. So bridging that fracture line gives a lot of learning. And then you have the fracture line between the current and the future, which we are not dealing with sufficiently well. But again, that's another fracture line that needs to be bridged. Now, on the opportunity side, if you can bridge these, I mean, not only do you stop the corrosion, but you can actually find these unexpected new ideas, unexpected friendships, and generally get on with things in a much better way. And TFD is, of course, ideally suited to do exactly that. So that's why.
Thanks very much, Lars. Is Tage there? If we haven't got Tage,
I think he's out hunting something on his estate, James.
Probably. So Nigel, you were probably at that meeting. Anyway, we got the Forest Dialogue. We've heard a little bit about its origins and its evolution. And before I hand over to Gary, I want us to visit the word cloud. Hopefully, while I've been talking, we've got the word cloud where we ask you to put your thoughts dialoguing on forests mean. So Luca's going to share that with us. I'll try and make some interesting observations. Here we go. It's moving. Lots of concept about building. It's good to see forests in the middle. It's about some of the things we've heard from Scott and Stephen and Nigel and Lars about trust, about knowledge, building better. That sounds actually quite contemporary. A lot of people talking about building back better. So certainly think forests can help there. We have a lot around collaboration. I like this idea of respect and possibility. Brewing, that's a good one. That may be because I'm a New Zealander and I like a lot of beer, but brewing thoughts, brewing partnerships all looks pretty good. So thank you very much for participating. And I'm now I'm going to hand it to Dr. Gary.
Thanks, James. We are going to show a couple videos now before we go into the next session. I'm sorry, somebody is unmuted.
I think it's Tage, Gary. I see Tage popping up on the screen here.
Okay. Sorry, Tage, can you mute again, please? Sorry. Thank you. Please roll video. I don't know about anybody else, but I can't hear anything.
Right.
Okay. While we're working on that technical challenge, these are videos. We had requested a bunch of folks kind of send in their thoughts and videos about, obviously, as the question says, TFD is. So these are very short, but it was terrific. And particularly for folks that couldn't join us today, it was terrific to get to receive these. Let's try again, please.
TFD is an example to polarize the society of the power of dialogue and was an inspiration to other multi-stakeholder forums around the world, such as Brazilian Coalition on Climate, Forest and Agriculture.
For me, TFD is about bringing forest stakeholders together to learn from each other and to build solutions for the world's forests.
For me, the Forest Dialogue is a platform where different voices around forests can be heard and discussed. It has had a major role in developing certification legality in the past 20 years. Listening, learning, and sharing experiences is an essential part of responsible business.
For me, TFD is about going deeper into the forest, deeper into the problems, and finding that there are people there in the forest and people in local organizations who can solve those problems.
For me, TFD is about bringing different voices together and build consensus. It's also about leave no one behind and create a better future.
For me, TFD is a unique global platform which brings together a wide variety of stakeholders to increase the understanding and find solutions to complex forest and land use issues.
Yeah, those videos are great. Those and the others that we've received will be available on the TFD website, the new TFD website, which we hope to launch before the end of the year. So stay tuned and we'll send everybody a link out once those videos and others are available. Also, that was pretty cool, that word cloud thing. We're going to do it again in a little while, so be prepared to get your pithy 1 and 2 words together. So right, we've heard about the early years of TFD. Thanks to everybody. Those have been, it's been wonderful for me, really, to hear from you all again. Let me just say, I feel very fortunate that Scott and Nigel thought of TFD for the Secretariat, and that Gus Speth agreed to let me take on the role of supporting this new group. That said, that very early period was a bit of a blur for me, for sure. Tracking these early discussions about TFD's focus and development was like drinking from a fire hose. I remember at one point, Nigel kindly pulled me aside and said that he and everybody wanted to hear a bit more of my opinions at the meetings. And I just remember thinking, I can't even imagine sharing an opinion to this very strong leaders group. Excuse me. Well, it took me a while, but I think I got there in the end. And now, frankly, I don't think the steering committee can shut me up at meetings. So there you go. Now, and what we're going to talk about now, then came the period of rapid development. Those early days, we were finding our feet, but then TFD really started to take off. It started to make a reputation for itself as a neutral stakeholder engagement platform. There was a lot of interest in TFD, and there was a lot of issues to explore. Everybody had ideas, of course, but the steering committee wanted more. They wanted more than a talk shop. And as Lars had mentioned, they wanted a platform that wasn't afraid to take on the real fault lines, or which I had forgotten, Lars, or fracture lines. But they also wanted one that worked towards implementing solutions. So let's talk now to a couple folks that were very influential during this growth phase. And they are James Griffiths and Marcus Colchester. You already know James and his work at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. For Marcus, he became engaged with TFD in around 2007, I think, Marcus. At the time, he was the director of the Forest Peoples Program based in the UK with a global portfolio to work with forest-based communities. He was particularly working in Indonesia. So Marcus, hopefully you have your microphone on. Marcus, if I recall correctly, you had some initial reservations about joining TFD. What exactly?
Hi there, Gary. Yes.
Hi, Marcus. What were your concerns, and what ultimately led you to agree to join efforts with us?
Yes. Well, firstly, I do want to say I'm really honored to be with you all today. It's a huge pleasure, and it's lovely thinking back on this history we've all been through together. But yes, I came into this world as a field anthropologist, as a human rights activist, and I was really concerned about what's happening to forest peoples on the ground in the forests. And when I was first invited to the Forest Dialogue meeting, I think it was the one in Hong Kong on illegal logging, I remember thinking, oh, well, that's just a talk shop between conservationists and banks. You know, what will they listen to what we've got to say? And I was skeptical, frankly, but I checked it out with a few colleagues, and they said, no, you know, this thing, you should give it a shot. And so I happily turned up, and I just saw, wow, these people are serious. They're interested. They do want to hear about these things. They've got a lot to say that I don't know. And I just suddenly realized, yes, dialogue really helps us. And as others have said, it builds trust. It helps you overcome suspicions, but stereotypes, which I think others have also said. But the thing that then went on to really impress me, and perhaps others haven't yet brought out, is the importance of the field dialogues. That when in later meetings, we then went into the field together to see things on the ground, to listen to the same communities, to see the same realities. Okay, we had different perspectives, but we started to be able to talk with a new level of understanding and shared knowledge. So I realized that TFD was really open to bringing in more about the social aspect. And I'd like to think that's something I've been able to help contribute to, is that we now do stand on the three legs of sustainability. It's about the economy, but it's about the environment, and it's about the people, about society. So yeah, for me, I just realized from that very first meeting that there's open-mindedness there, which I had been too prejudiced to anticipate.
Yeah, thanks for that, Marcus. And I remember very clearly that meeting in Pekanbaru when members from the local community wanted to assemble outside the dialogue because they wanted to protest some things that were happening in the province. And after we had a quick meeting, we asked them to join us, and they were quite surprised by that. And that was an amazing experience. So opening the door, as it were, figuratively and literally, to forest-based communities, to indigenous peoples, and of course to family forest owners, I think was a thing that TFD did, and I hope did well. James.
And we've got many more social groups now on the steering committee from all parts of the world. So yeah,
absolutely,
it's been a big evolution. Thanks.
And we're also coming out with a social safeguard statement based on some of our experience. So stay tuned for that. James, I also seem to remember you were a bit skeptical in the early days. Well, maybe you're mostly skeptical about me, but that's, again, a different story. I know your WBCSD member companies were committed to TFD and the value of dialogue. But what convinced you that this platform was the right one for the companies to engage with other stakeholders among the many other platforms that were out there?
Thanks, Gary. So yeah, so 2002, I moved from New Zealand to Switzerland, where I still live. I started working at WBCSD. I don't work there now. I've been long gone. But I found when I came here to Europe to work at WBCSD with the Forest Solutions Group, I had to very quickly change my focus from New Zealand forestry, which is, plantations in a big conservation estate that enjoyed good support. There was always some problems, but across stakeholders, Indigenous people, local government, small forest owners, big forest owners, MPs, there was a degree of alignment. And then coming and being parachuted into Europe and working with these global forest industries companies, what was very clear to me from the companies is they were looking for what I'm calling a breakthrough pathway. They wanted to, looking for a structure, a process to move from business being the sustainability problem when it came to forests to being a much more constructive and positive part of the solution. So, and that really involved a focus on civil society organizations. They were wanting to change the nature of the relationship with civil society groups, especially the advocacy NGOs that were so active, raising awareness around the world on forestry issues at that period of time. So the idea was not to see NGOs as antagonists, as the enemy, so to speak, but as collaborators and partners. And so this involved companies through the dialogue process, starting to realize there were some real business benefits in a structured approach to stakeholder dialogue around forests. You could leverage the natural and social capital expertise of the NGO community. These skills simply didn't exist in industry back then, really. Now you see more and more people in companies, but they weren't there. You could leverage that expertise. Also appreciating that NGOs, again, particularly the advocacy ones, are very good indicators of emerging issues. If you listen to NGOs, they tell you what's coming down the pipeline, and are better at picking up public policy changes, are better at picking up market evolution, market developments, and also appreciate, because of their work, they're changing consumer attitudes. So it was trying to change that relationship. In terms of Yale, why TFD at Yale? Well, Yale, very strong brand. Business tends to think, in brand terms, very strong brand. Gus, incredibly well known around the world. The confidence of leaders like Nigel and Scott, willing to put their names on the line. But it's certainly the Yale brand appealed to global forestry companies, the ones I was working for, but was also seen as being a very strong and safe space for the global NGO community. So it was about changing the dynamic, and this all starts with dialogue. And we've heard this a little bit. Dialogue leads to relationships. Relationships gives you the opportunity to develop a common agenda. And more importantly, and we saw this with TFD, agreed actions. So that basically is why WBCSD and its member companies really became very committed to the TFD process. And I think that commitment continues today.
Great, thanks, James. I do remember a phrase I often heard from you, which underscores the learning curve that I had in understanding how to work better with companies. I was, comfortable relatively in the academic community as well as the NGO community, but learning to work and bring the companies into this process was always something that I learned from you. And the phrase that you used to tell me all the time was, Gary, if I were in your position, this is what I would do. And I always knew, James, you were basically suggesting what I needed to do. And that was very helpful because it was a lot to do, to think about all those different, in the early days especially, bringing everybody into the table in a way that they felt comfortable. So again, thanks for that, James. I'm going to come back to James and Marcus in a minute, but I also want to bring in a couple other really important voices in this process. And these are folks that were willing to jump in head first. They provided really strong leadership in helping to push TFD forward in these formative and development years. So first up is Minnie Degawan. Minnie, are you there? I hope your mic is working. Hi, Minnie. Minnie, I know you joined TFD as one of the founders of the International Alliance for Indigenous and Tribal Peoples of the Tropical Forest. I know that the Alliance was involved in many different platforms, particularly the UN's. How did you think TFD could help your work? Or did you think that you needed to help TFD bring Indigenous voices into our process, or maybe it's both? What do you think, Minnie?
Hi, yes, thanks, Gary. And hello to everyone. It's so great to see everyone. And looking at the pictures, it brings me back to that first meeting. And I have to thank, or maybe not thank, Marcus. I blame Marcus for bringing me into the TFD. If he was very skeptical, it was a very big challenge for me to join TFD. This was at the time 2006, 2007, when the Indigenous Peoples Movement was trying to get out or gain new allies from moving their struggles at the community level and then going to Geneva for the UN, and then trying to build alliances with others. And we were thinking, is forming alliances with corporations, with big NGOs, the way to go? So it was a big challenge, especially personally for me as being an Indigenous person and as a woman in a room full of suits. It was learning curve for me. But I know that Indigenous peoples wanted to reach out to build understanding and build dialogue essentially with other actors. So by joining the TFD, it was really trying to learn what is it that NGOs want, what is it that companies need, and then at the same time sensitizing other actors on why it is valuable to have the inputs of Indigenous people. So yes, it started off as a very challenging position for myself, but through the years that I've worked with you, with the others in the steering committee, it has, I think, made me appreciate more the value of learning. I've always thought that learning was something to be done at the community level when we have our circles, but TFD has also its circles. And I've learned to appreciate that the circles do not necessarily have to be in my community, but in a broader community. So that is something that I will always bring with me, the value of listening to others. And just by listening, I was able to learn, and I just hope that the others have also learned with the participation of Indigenous peoples in TFD. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Minnie. And I do have to say that I think in my working with you, it became very apparent to me that culturally we had to think about TFD. We had to think about TFD moving away from a kind of Western white institution and one that might be and must be more welcoming to a much broader cross-section of the global population. And I thank you for having some very frank conversations with me about that. It was absolutely instrumental. Now I want to bring in Peter Konofsky, my friend Peter. Peter, even though TFD was based at Yale, I think surprisingly, you were the first academic to actually join the steering committee in 2007. I know that for many other academics, stakeholder engagement isn't necessarily a priority. And there's a variety of reasons for that, which I understand. But I appreciate that you took a different view. So as a professor from Australian National University, what did you hope to gain from or give to this process? Peter.
Well, thank you, Gary, and hello, everybody from Canberra. I hope to give the world my sense of fashion, wearing this fine Australian wombat shirt that I was recently given for a significant birthday. It's great to see you all. It's great to be part of the event. Seeing those pictures makes me think of the TFD meeting flags, and I don't have one, so I'll just hold my keyboard up to signify my right to speak. Well, you know in Australia that we do forest conflict very well. We've been doing forest conflict very well for a century or so at least, and we haven't given up yet. And for the decade or so before I joined TFD, I'd been immersed in community level and government level processes around trying to resolve forest conflict in Australia with mixed success. And I guess that that decade of learning gave me a strong sense that an approach that was structured, had a robust approach to working through contested issues with all of the key stakeholders, with doing that in a respectful way, in a wider group than we often tended to do, was something that was very valuable. And so for me, it was an opportunity to, move from that learning in Australia to engaging in processes more globally. And I think that TFD remains a unique and important platform for addressing those fracture lines that we've already talked about. And also, I would say, as I see from many other people feeling the same in the chat, it's been a wonderful opportunity to meet many extraordinary people and learn from them. And I thank you all for that. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks for that, Peter. I'm sorry we didn't have our traditional birthday beer this year. I wish we had been able to do that, but I'm sure we will have, I hope we will have more birthdays to celebrate. Missed that. Okay, so now on to Gerhard Dietele. Gerhard, while you weren't the first person from the bank to serve on the Forest Dialogue Steering Committee, you clearly saw the value of a process like TFD. So my question is why? And I think a lot of people might ask that as well. The World Bank had access to so many higher profile platforms, so many. Some they controlled and some they participated in, but always at such a high level. What about TFD helped convince you to not only participate, but to actually help support initiatives? And I want to stress that fact that you really stepped in and up in the steering committee and brought the resources of the World Bank into this process in a way that we hadn't seen before. So Gerhard, thoughts on why?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and it is great to and I'm surprised how many friends we are now after so many years, and it's great to see you all smiling, and I think that's we are a sort of family now. Now, why I joined the Forest Dialogue was because at the bank there are many bright people and very ambitious people, and they have there are people who have a solution for every problem, I would say, and it's a real competition among social development experts, economists, and technical specialists. And I felt when I joined the bank, this is a rough place, and everybody tried to convince the other that the solution is the best proposed by the individual specialists there. And I think what has surprised me most in the forest dialogue was that there was a possibility to listen without competition and to learn from each other without playing a certain role, the role you are obliged when you are speaking for the company. I think we were all speaking as individuals, and as it has been mentioned already earlier, that we have there are no stereotypes, because I think at the end we could understand each other. And what I learned there was that that there was a tendency when we came to climate change and forest degradation and biodiversity destruction and so on, that a sort of re-centralization was introduced again because big money coming into forests. And I think what I learned there is that we have to have a certain top-down approach, but we also need to have a bottom-up approach, and they have to meet together somewhere. And because there is no solution if people on the ground do not understand and are convinced to do certain things which are coming from the big economist thinking and so on. So I think that influenced me very much, and I got more confidence to speak up inside the bank to bring this bottom-up approach into macroeconomic thinking and so on. And I was very proud that through the way we have been able to talk inside the forest dialogue, I was able to propose the dedicated grant mechanism for indigenous peoples and local communities within the climate investment funds. And that fund got dedicated with 80 million US dollars and so on. And I think that changed the mind within the bank, that indigenous peoples and local communities are not a potential risk for the bank to engage, but they are actually a benefit for the bank to engage. And I think that changed the mind inside the World Bank. And I think this would not have been possible without all your thinking and support and the many dialogues which we had and the many visits and discussions in the TFD. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerhard. I do remember some very special visits down to DC to meet you, and the fun of going through the World Bank security, and but some really terrific meetings about and the visioning and the future and thinking so incredibly big. I was always very impressed, and your ability to bring that together and actually move on some of those things have been terrific. So thanks for that. I really wish we had more time. I have more questions. I wanted to hear more. There's a couple more folks that I wanted to bring in, particularly James Mayers and Rod Taylor, but unfortunately we've run out of time, and I need to be fair to other folks and move on. So we're going to do another word cloud very quickly, and the question for this word cloud is, what next for Dialogue on Forest? And a quick note, we aren't asking what next for the Forest Dialogue or TFD. We'd like your ideas about what should we as a community consider for advancing future issues or advancing the dialogue process itself. So think about that. We're going to give you a minute or two, really very, very brief, but please start filling in your ideas in the word cloud. While that's happening, I am going to hand it over to Liz Felker. Liz, can you take it away?
Hi there. It's great to be with you all today and to see so many familiar faces. And I'm tasked today with bringing in some voices that are often more behind the scenes, but you all know them very well. We know that what TFD is what happens out in the world, but there's a fair amount of work back in the Secretariat, back in the office, and now we're going to hear from some of those voices. And before I do, I just want to say a big thank you to Gary as he walks away. There's many people in the chat coming through with big thanks to Gary. And from everyone back at the Secretariat, we just want to say thank you for your leadership and your mentorship. And also a big thank you to Lisa O'Brien, another key engine of the Secretariat. Thanks for all your patience and support. And I see many current and former TFD staff and Yale students joining us today. So big hello to all of you. Many of you know that TFD staff are primarily Yale students, and they're a big part of driving TFD Secretariat, from doing research, drafting concept notes, facilitating, doing logistics and communications. So we just want to hear from a few of those voices, and we're going to kick it off with a video featuring two of them.
Hi, this is Teresa.
Hi, it's Xiaoting.
And we are both TFD program managers, and we're actually both working at IIED now. We love getting together and talking about TFD times, and for me, TFD times is the countless shared bus rides in oftentimes perilous conditions, where you don't really want to look down the road or sit at the front and see where the driver is going. But that is what has allowed for all that time spent to create connections and build connections with everyone on the trip.
I completely agree. And for me, there's also memories of hours spent to try to find a steering committee member who was so engrossed and interested in indigenous people's culture that he or she got lost in a Maya ruin in Guatemala. But it's because of those field trip experiences that we get to know something we never seen, experienced before, and build trust with people with very different background and experiences. And that trust help us to work together towards a common goal. Congratulations, TFD.
Yeah, happy birthday. Bye.
Bye.
As you say bye in your video, I'm going to bring you back in. So starting with Teresa, you were the first program manager for TFD. So I'd love to ask you, how did your experience with TFD prepare you for jumping in as program manager and running the Investing in Locally Controlled Forestry initiative?
Hi everyone. It says a lot. I think that I've been from the beginning getting emotional just seeing all these photos and all these rush of memories. I think becoming program manager was a big symbol or sign. I know we don't have much time. There's so much to say, but I think it was a really great step in recognizing that TFD deserved more than just the annual circulation of interns, that as much as all the effort and, work and incredible contributions that they gave, but kind of taking that step of saying, no, you know what, we deserve a bit more dedicated staff. This is really important, and we can't just kind of go from, and having, of course, that support to Gary and to Lisa. So I think that was a really symbolic and big step. And we were able to move things forward with a bit more kind of consistency and systems and integrate things to make it a little bit more structured and solid with that structure. I know you have questions for others, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, thanks for laying that groundwork. Xiaoting, I'd love to bring you in now. You and Teresa are, you know, constant names and refrains that we hear, you know, as we're working for TFD and just learning from your experiences. So I'd love to hear from you what a key lesson or skill from your time working at TFD is that you have, you know, carried forward and applied to your work now.
Thanks. Good to see everyone. And I get, as everyone said, that most people see a snapshot of the dialogue process through participating in the 2 to 4 discussions, 4 days discussions. But the TFD staff, one of the luxuries is to experience months of careful planning, going behind the scene. That's so crucial and fundamental to build an inclusive and equitable dialogue process. Many people talked about already. It is sometimes a really difficult process, time-consuming, resource-consuming, but as many said, always systematic, always careful, and that's so incredibly valuable and effective in bringing people with different background views together, and sometimes elevate some of the marginal voices. So such dialogue process is very valuable, especially in this day and age where we see the society is increasingly polarized. Too many people too often forget to really listen to each other, and that building trust in a lasting relationship takes time and sometimes really hard compromises. There's so many things I learned from that experience, and being able to see behind the scene painstaking process to make that miracle happen. I guess one of the most important things for both my career and the life is the importance of humility, empathy, and compassion. In my work and life, I now always try to make efforts to understand the different cultures and people from different backgrounds. I always try to question my own prejudice and check if I'm indeed trying to listen and understand. It's really not always easy, and when it gets difficult, it's the TFD days, those amazing photos, many amazing leaders I met through TFD who is always so humble, so genuine, and so compassionate. That reminds me that I need to keep on trying, and I just really can't help get a bit emotional looking at all those really great faces all around the world today. And thanks to everyone and the TFD for giving me an opportunity to be part of the family. And we really need more of this compassion and willingness to listen in this world now. And it just, yeah. So thanks for everyone, and thanks. And I think today is about celebrating all your efforts, contribution, and dedication, which made TFD it is today.
Thank you, Xiaoting. I definitely echo your sentiment, and I think I couldn't say it any better. I'd love to hear from both of you more and learn more, but for the sake of time, I just want to bring in a current Yale student working for the Forest Dialogue. There are many you know, current students and former students on the call today, but I think we'll just hear from Luca first. Luca, if you could just speak to what has been a big takeaway from working for TFD so far. What's your experience been like?
Hi, Liz, and hi, everyone here. I think it's been incredible to listen to all of you in this call and also work for the past year on the TFD 20th anniversary publication, because it really, for me, is an illustration of the huge foundation that I get to build from as a student right now, working at TFD, but also a student thinking about forest and related conflict and dialogue right now in 2020. This community of people and all of the connections I'm able to make through the steering committee members, past and present, is just an incredibly valuable experience as a student. And I think Linda Walker put it in the chat a couple moments ago, but I just feel so fortunate to be able to be learning both as a student, but also in this role working with really generous steering committee members and incredible stakeholders who push ahead my thinking and are just putting me in a place where I have to be really critically thinking about the future and what role I can play in pushing ahead all of these really important conversations. So it's just a big thank you to, I think, all the people in this network for continuing to give opportunities to students like me to engage in these issues and really think critically.
Thanks, Luca, and thanks, Teresa and Xiaoting. I think with that, I will pass it over to Milagre to kick off the now and future session.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everybody. This really feels like a great celebration. We have heard before about the roots of TFD. We have heard about all the work that goes behind the scenes to make seemingly easy and fun dialogue successful. And Xiaoting just reminded us of how much time it takes and how much effort it takes to make sure that we understand who are the stakeholders in the field and how we need to work to make sure that they are all represented in all dialogues that we have in the field. So it is with that in mind that I really feel this sense of celebration and accomplishment for all that has gone before. And of course, I think we started today by just Yvonne and I as a current colleague talking about or welcoming you all to this celebration. But it's time to hear from some of these colleagues of today, let's say. We have had, just before I joined the team of co-leaders, we had two great steering committee members who were entrusted with this, and that was Yvonne and Chris. In this session, where we're going to hear about what TFD is doing today and why, and also maybe some reflections about where we are going with this, I would like to ask Chris and Yvonne to be ready to enter this conversation. Chris is currently the Deputy Director of Operations and Global Forest and Climate Change Program Officer. He has more than 20 years of experience and working in Africa and in many other places in the world. And Yvonne is the Forest Sustainability Senior Consultant at Klabin, a pulp and paper company in Brazil. She also plays a leading role in the company's local, regional, and global engagement with NGO and associations in the sector. And she's a member of a key international organization in the forestry world. This pair I have now the pleasure to talk to have been at the head of TFD efforts to organize dialogues in a time when major shifts in the sector were happening. And so I would like to hear their reflections on how do they see those, or what those shifts and where, and how the TFD responded to that. I know they were heading this process, and I would like to hear from them, just some reflection from that time, which we are calling, okay, the now of TFD. Yvonne, I would like to start with you.
Thank you, Milagre. It's just very exciting to talk about TFD, and what you are introducing now is about what we are doing nowadays and what we are foreseeing for the future. I would say that we have all this forestry evolution that comes from, new technologies all around the world to solve different problems in forestry. But we are still talking from the time that we started talking about certification, talking about biodiversity, or about poverty reduction or illegal logging. We are always talking about sustainable forest management. And sustainable forest management, in my opinion, is one thing that we are going to carry out for the next years. I think TFD is going to continue to be about how to tackle important issues, how we can transform conflicts into collaboration, how we can improve conditions for all those that depends on forests. And when we had this word cloud and we see the climate in the middle of everything in a big letters, I think climate is going to be about the center of what we are going to think from now. And that is not about only carbon issues. I think this is about ecosystem services. So when we talk about ecosystem services, we are talking about life in Earth. And what imports for us is to defend, is to stimulate a better life in the Earth. So for me, to find these solutions, we need to listen to all these multi-stakeholders environments, and the richness of TFD community is still about bringing people together. So share visions with people, I think, is what we need to talk about. Chris, which are your thoughts?
Thanks, Ivone. I have to start with sort of saying a thank you, but there's too many thank yous to give on this 20th anniversary. But there's thank yous to Yale, TFD Secretariat, the students, the leadership, steering committee members, everyone who's been involved. It's been quite a journey. I've been involved for 10 years, and TFD has been really valuable to us. Sadly, Ivone, we both got the looking forward bit. We don't get the opportunity to reflect on so many happy memories, both in the field and at Yale, and many other wonderful trips. So whether they be on Teresa's bus rides, or looking through photos, or actually talking fantastic substance with fantastic people.
Motorbike rides.
Exactly. I was on a boat. I think I missed out on the motorbikes, but anyway, I was on a boat somewhere out to an island in Panama. But yeah, I mean, I think the sort of, you've reflected wonderfully on the sort of the thematic areas, but it has been interesting how, you know, TFD has moved from also finding that balance between the location-based dialogues through themes like the land use dialogue, which has become from requests of that constant support and feedback, and dealing with issues on, you know, trade-offs, land dynamics, etc., but also to the specific theme-based, you know, the more traditional theme-based that still continue and still have extremely great value to this day. So those part of the process, I think, have been critical and still will be critical. In the last 3 or 4 years, it's been fascinating to see the links and the changes with the school, seeing the new leadership in the school, but also seeing Gary's role evolving and the value of TFD in the school, and that's been fantastic. For the near future, I mean, it's interesting seeing. I think everyone sort of there's been some text in the box, but also in the word, the word count, the word smithing, whatever it was earlier. Seeing climate come up front and center, and in my role as well as director of the Forest Programme, I've got a second role in supporting the high-level champions on nature-based solutions for COP26, and climate is still there. You know, it's been central to TFD's dialogues for the last 15 years, and climate is still there. It's getting even bigger now as the UK have got nature and nature-based solutions as one of its 5 priorities. So, working on that, whether it still be through the mass timber and the mass timber and the forest economy coalition dialogues, I think that's really important. That has what the role of carbon in that, and the good quality, good buyers, etc. I think that's a very exciting next step for TFD. But also just while I'm with you, Yvonne, I think it's also what is really interesting, I suppose, to be fair, 4 or 5 years ago, I think there was a lot of questions from the forest companies who have been the heart and soul of TFD about the role that TFD plays. And it's really exciting to see that coming back as companies are now taking on a front and center role in the climate change discussions, not only in how they can provide materials for circular bioeconomies, but also just their role in restoration and planting material, or of course then the carbon capture as well. So I think TFD is extremely well placed for the future.
Thank you, Chris and Yvonne. As we go on with this conversation, I also wanted to bring to the table Sarah and Miriam. They are past steering committee, our past steering committee member. Miriam, she's an environmentalist, climate change activist, founder, and currently also the vice president of APREMAVI, which is an association in Brazil for the preservation of environment and life. She's also the former executive secretary of the Brazilian Forest Dialogue. And we have Sarah, who is a sustainability manager for SAPI, a global pulp and paper company. She has been involved with TFD over 15 years and in different capacity, and now is also on a current steering committee member. And so from these very different capacities, one from a company perspective and the other one as an activist, an environmental activist, we would both being associated with the Forest Dialogue, including as steering committee members. I would like to hear from them as well. So Sarah, can I start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Milagre, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. It's a absolute pleasure to be here and to hear everyone's different accounts of TFD's history. I mean, I've looked through the book many times as it's been produced over the years, but it's been really nice to hear it coming out of people's voices and hearing the personal reflections. And I was laughing, when Steve Bass mentioned, the discussions around virgin versus recycled fiber, and thinking, oh, geez, those are the same topics, same questions we get asked these days as well. So no, indeed, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think a couple of the comments that I wanted to reflect on today was really, now I've been in the steering committee for the last 2 years. I first joined TFD as a program associate when I was studying at Yale back in 2004, and then I've had the chance to participate in different dialogues as a professional throughout the year. So I kind of had the chance to see TFD from different angles, but also changing in different hats too, as a student, working for NGOs, and now working for the private sector. And I can just say that I have so much respect for the work that TFD does in terms of how it brings people together to really focus on the critical topics. And I have so much respect for that. And I hope we can continue TFD for another 20 years at least. And I think since being on the steering committee, one thing that's come to my attention more so is just the important role that the steering committee has to play in terms of setting the priorities for TFD. I mean, there's this need to kind of constantly reflect on, what are the critical issues that are affecting the health of forests and the people that depend on them. where can dialogue play a role and how can TFD get there to do it? And I think it's that kind of reiterative process, it's that discussion that the steering committee members get to have quite regularly now, where we reflect on where should we focus our attention. And I find that extremely rewarding. I think it's a little bit different from the early days maybe, and some of this middle period that we just heard in today's agenda, where I guess I'm thinking that maybe in the early days of TFD, it was a bit easier to figure out where to focus and perhaps who to convene. And I think today it's slightly more challenging just because dialogue is on one hand more widespread of a tool, thankfully. So there's lots of different platforms and organizations using it. But also I think forestry issues and forest issues are just popping up everywhere. And so they should, but it gets harder to put our finger on, I think, exactly where TFD focuses and how to focus, also because there's so many more stakeholders. I mean, now there's, needing to think through investment and brand owners and technology providers and YouTubers. Everyone has an interest in forests these days. So I just think there's this shift in the kind of future forward-looking TFD that gets even more challenging to put our finger on it, the topics that we convene on. I think indeed the topics that Chris and Yvonne mentioned, and especially emphasizing around forests and climate, indeed, I would agree with those, that focus as well. I think, we know we need to bring down our greenhouse gas emissions. We know forests are part of the solution, but how to scale and how to build consensus where there's fracture lines, or how to move quickly when we disagree on what to be doing exactly about whether forests should be used for only sequestering and storing carbon, or whether we should be using forests more for utilization and replacing fossil-derived products. And these critical questions, and of course the answer is somewhere in the balance, but I think TFD can play a critical role on the forest and climate discussion from mitigation, adaptation, and utilization perspectives. And quite excited about a lot of the new initiatives that the steering committee are working on now with relation to forests and fire, related to mass timber, and different aspects of forest and climate issues. So thanks, Milagre.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Miriam, would you like to share your reflections with?
Yes. Thanks, Milagre, and hello, everybody. So nice and excited to see you all. I'm honored to be here. Well, here is a model in Brazil, and we use it at Apremavi. It's called Boca no trombone e mão na massa. On a literal translation, it means shout out and hands on. And as an environmentalist who seeks this model on a daily basis, I can say that being part of TFD makes it much easier. For the last 20 years, TFD has addressed extremely important issues for sustainability on the planet. And I had the opportunity to accompany many of these dialogues, and also the application of the TFD methodology in Brazil. The Brazilian Forest Dialogue, created in 2005, was inspired by TFD. And these are success stories that have already addressed fundamental issues for the whole community. And it is working. It's helping to change people's lives. With the content already generated so far, but much more, the way the dialogue is conducted actually offers our current world agenda an incredible and much needed tool. The dialogue itself, it's a tool. And it's not just the work process that is amazing. The people that engage in this initiative grow so much, and the exchanges are so fruitful. TFD is a network of people. And I think we are all very proud to say we are part of the TFD family. And it is a personal, but also an institutional satisfaction. Nobody experiences dialogue and remains the same person. It is a great learning experience. And this personal and institutional learning is an immense asset that must be available to the waves of changes that we need to make to maintain life on Earth. Humanity is going through serious crisis. We have a lot of people speaking about this till now today. Loss of biodiversity, water scarcity, the biggest of all, the climate crisis. And the thing is, we need to treat this crisis as crisis. And the TFD model is one of the best ways to do this. I have said that TFD anticipated in 20 years something that is now essential, the importance of being open to dialogue. Realizing this is an extraordinary from the point of view of achievement, but also a little bit doubting from the point of view of responsibility. I think we have also two levels of necessary discussion. One is internal, how TFD can be improved, scaled up, how can be increased, maybe somehow reinvented. The other is external. How can we use this example and all our knowledge and human and organizational capital to roll up our sleeves and make even more difference across the world? We can do it, but we will need a lot of inclusion and solidarity. And I will quote two persons, and with that, I would like to thank all the people who put their name in this history. So I will give a special thanks to Lisa, helped us so much in many, many dialogues. And of course, thanks, Gary, for all the work you have done to the TFD family till now. And cheers and long life to TFD. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Miriam. We have heard from 4 colleagues, and we have talked about TFD and the importance it has played in our lives, personally, professionally. And but how does this happen? Has TFD learned something from all of this in terms of process? One of the things that TFD has done is to put all of that learning on paper so that this could be shared with everybody. Dialogue is never a finished product. Dialogue takes different shapes and forms everywhere, but we require a little bit of structure to be able to ensure that all the dots are crossed, and even though the dots shift all the time. And so from 20 years of learning, we would like to share some of those experiences. And for that, I'm going to ask first Francisco, who is going to introduce the TFD guide. And then that will be followed by Fernanda, who will introduce the Land Use Dialogue Guide, which is, I would like to state here, on the Land Use Dialogue, which is an initiative that was, I think, Chris carried this baby on his back for a long, long time, and in many places in the world, particularly in Africa. And so from that learning comes this guide as well that we'll be sharing with everybody today. So to kickstart this process, I would like to ask Francisco, our colleague Francisco Rodriguez, who is the Certification Sustainability Manager at CMPC in Chile, a colleague in the steering committee of the Forest Dialogue, to launch the TFD guide.
Thank you very much, Milagre, for the introduction. And I would like to thank everyone to be here, being part of this anniversary. Listening to all of you has given me a lot of the history of this TFD, and maybe after listening to you, I can understand better the content of the Forest Dialogue Guide. Well, this year we have been through COVID-19, but we haven't been losing time, and we have been preparing these documents that are really much putting TFD in the future, because, well, you have been talking about what is coming in the future. A lot of people have been talking about the climate change, but I would say that climate change is going to be putting a lot of pressure on resources, on land, and because of that, a lot of dialogue is going to be needed. So I will say that it's an excellent moment to introduce this Forest Dialogue Guide that is going to be a document to be used by people that would like to solve problems. You have been talking about the fractal lines. Well, I'm sure there are going to be many in the future because of what I mentioned before. So this document is going to be available now for all the sectors. It's not just for the forest sector. It could be used in mining, agriculture, etc., because we know that there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot or big need of dialogue. So this will give in the 4 chapters of this guide. You will find an excellent guide to go through the process of starting a dialogue, going through it, and getting the outcomes, which is the most important part of it. So 20 years of experience are related in this. It's quite a simple document, and I would like to thank Ethan Miller to be part of the editing part of this guide. I don't have much more to say, Milagre.
Thank you. Thank you so much. To everyone in this celebration, I just wanted to call your attention to the fact that the guides have been posted on the chat, and if you would like to download, it's now available. I would now call on our other steering committee member, Fernanda, who is as I said, she's a steering committee member, but she's the executive secretary of the Brazilian Forest Dialogue, who has been who has had a rich and extensive career in the forestry sector through working for private companies, NGO, and international organizations as well. Fernanda, the floor is yours to launch the Land Use Dialogue guide.
Obrigada, Milagre. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Liz Felker for the leadership on convening all the contributions and build this Land Use Dialogue Guide. It's a landmark. And also the Brazilian tree industry, IBA, for the support to the translation into Portuguese. We are going to have this LUD guide and also TFD guide in Portuguese. Here, I'm very happy today. We have almost 20 people from Brazil, including Mauro Armelin, that's currently together with Yvonne from the board of directors of FSC International, people from all regional forum of the Brazilian Forest Dialogue. Thank you very much. About the guide, the Land Use Dialogue is one of the TFD's key initiatives aimed at supporting learning processes in landscapes around the world, where stakeholders are applying a landscape approach to environmental decision-making. Landscape approaches are increasingly used with the understanding that one actor does on their land impacts the surrounding land uses and resources throughout the landscape. While this concept has long been understood in environmental science, many institutions and governance process remain siloed to their own specializations, be it forest conservation or agriculture. The Land Use Dialogue Initiative aims to support a process for leaders and representatives across sectors and interests to understand, 1, varying visions for land use, conservation, and development in the landscape. 2, identifying trade-offs and synergies. And 3, work towards solutions. This Land Use Dialogue Guide bring all the knowledge that starts to be built in 2016 in the first pilot in Brazil, in Santa Catarina State, and also is experienced in many countries, especially Tanzania, Brazil, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Uganda, and this methodology for sure it's very important when we think about landscapes and land use dialogue. I am very excited to share with you this new and looking forward to read it, this new guide. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. Thank you, Fernanda, for that. So with the 2 guides now launched and available to everyone on this, and they will also be available on our website. It's now in the public domain, and I'm sure these guides will be evolving with time as issues evolve, as people also evolve, so I'm sure when we have our next celebration, we'll be having many other guides on different issues, probably on climate and forest and climate, which is has been mentioned today by so many of those that spoke here as a key issue for the future. But I would like to go back to Francisco, and then as we close this session, I would like to give Francisco and Fernanda an opportunity not just to launch the guides, but also to share their ideas on what they see as the critical issues for the future. Francisco?
Thank you very much, Milagre. Well, Ivone, Bas, and others have been talking a lot about what they see the future will be for the forest dialogue. As I was mentioning before, I think the dialogue process is going to be really required because of the fight, let's say, for resources that we are going to have in the future. We have a growing population, a great demand for resources coming from nature. So I see there that we are going to have a great possibility, let's say, of continuing with what we have been doing in the past. So I see that probably some problems are going to be new, but the dialogue will require to be present because of what I mentioned before. And we will require our presence in the field. As Marcus mentioned some minutes ago, that field part of the process is very important, and we will require to come back very soon. Milagre.
Fernanda, anything you'd like to share? Thank you, Francisco. I was muted.
Thank you very much. Yes, Francisco just mentioned about the COVID-19. We are facing this challenge now, and I think it's not the first and will not be the last pandemic that we're going to face. So I think we have to always reinventing our work, thinking about bringing local and global together. bringing local context and take into account the relevant to global policy issues. Especially the LUD guide is now disclosing this methodology and will help to build a more sustainable future in the landscapes, being local, led by local organizations, people, companies, and international format. So I think this local level thinking through the LUD in particular is an essential evolution. We have to increase the number of the dialogues and also track our impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernanda. Chris and Yvonne, any word from you as we close this session before we can allow ourselves to celebrate? Chris, Yvonne?
I just wanted to say how I'm feeling happy and invite everyone to share ideas and thoughts.
Promover a conexão, acho que fica bom.
As a TFD steering committee, we are open to ideas, to stakeholders' input. So just wanting to listen from all of you that have so many ideas. Thank you so much. Thank you, Milagre.
Thank you, Yvonne. I'm not sure if Chris, are you still there? If not, I'll ask James then to take us to the next session. Thank you all for sharing your reflections on this. Thank you. James?
Yeah, so thank you, Milagre, and also all of the contributors in that last sessions. It was fantastic. So I have an easy job as we close this, which is to propose a virtual toast to TFD's first 20 years and the launch of its next 20 years. So first of all, I would like to thank Yale as the long-term host of TFD. I really want to thank Gary and all of the TFD managers and interns, and it's been great to see so many of you and learn where you've ended up in your careers. I want to really congratulate Gary and his team over 20 years from turning this idea of dialogue that Nigel and Scott sparked into a reality, and a reality that has evolved and changed over time, and I'm sure will continue to as we move forward. I want to also thank all of the steering committee members. It's been great to see so many of you, fantastic colleagues and friends, but just thank you for being such wonderful and impactful forest champions. 20 years ago, forests wasn't really at the top of anybody's agenda, except perhaps conflict. And now it's center stage to just so many of the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, climate and productivity, water, you name it. So thanks also to all of the steering committee members. But I also want to thank each and every participant that went to any of the dialogues, the policy dialogues, the field dialogues, the writing, books. I know as a participant, I learned from each and every one of you. I always came away with a new learning, a new insight, in something that impacted my thinking and still impacts my thinking as I work on sustainability issues. So with that, I'm going to toast you all with a cup of tea, but I'd like to hand it back to Yvonne. Cheers. Well done.
Cheers, James.
Cheers.
Thank
Cheers.
you so much. Oh, my glass is here, but I think I'm having some problems with the video. I would like to say thank you for everybody for being here today. And also say that we still like each other and we still have our gluing thoughts, making this TFD in front and for the future. Thank you. I want to give it back to Milagre. Cheers, Milagre. Unmute, Milagre.
Am I? I'm so excited. I'm forgetting now my microphone. As we finish this session today, I would like just to share a reflection in that I know that many people mention how polarized our world is, and I think that today, not just for this celebration, but because we are also sharing the TFD guide. I'm hoping that this guide and the few lessons that we managed to put together in this guide, they can be useful not just for the for forest dialogues, but also to other issues, to other sectors. I'll drink to that and to all of you. Cheers. And now pass it on to James. Oh, James, you started first. I'll pass it on to Gary.
Milagre, I think so much has been said. Just a couple things that I'll say by way of toast. One thing is, after we're having a soft end to this meeting, so folks that can hang out and other toasts, we welcome them. A bunch of us are going to hang out as well, and we'd love to chat. So please, if you can, stick around. For me, absolutely, and first and foremost, I'd like to thank Liz Felker and Yvonne Shi for putting this together and working with the full TFD team. It's been a bit of a lift. We had planned to do this in person at some global event. I would have loved to have been able to see and give everybody a hug, but I think we did the best that we can, and I've been very heartened to hear from so many of you, and hopefully some more. So great job. And of course, thanks to the co-leads, Milagre and Ivone. Your leadership has been inspiring. Again, I've valued the work over the years with all our co-leads in our steering committee. But it's especially terrific, the energy, passion, and vision that you both have brought to this. And after 20 years, it still feels fresh and new and very exciting to come to work every day. And finally, James Griffiths for coming back, doing one more time for TFD. Great as always to see you, James. So with that, I want to toast you all. You're all amazing, and I really do look forward to 20 more years. At some point in those 20 years, I think I will probably retire, maybe. But anyway, thanks everybody. Cheers.